The clocks. You didn't move Stonehenge around?
What else do I need to do for you today, Leslie?
I love you.
Make a list.
Oh, really? Can I?
Yeah, totally. Make a list. Make a list.
Okay.
Is the lighting to your liking?
That's great.
Yeah? Is
yeah,
it?
Yeah.
You want to show off your mug?
Oh, gosh. That thing?
Yeah, do it. I'll do
my
it.
God.
Look at that.
It's
She made
so drippy.
a dwippy mug.
The glaze dripped really bad.
It's like a frosting mug. It's very Christmas.
I guess it is like a frosting mug. It's kind of cute, but it's a little bit janky.
It's a minty Christmas cheer of mug.
I
What's your take on eggnog?
I like a little bit of it. It's kind of nice to have a little bit, but I'm really picky about ingredients, so I don't want to buy store-bought eggnog.
Have you ever made it?
Us some. No.
Oh yeah, I should make it.
No.
There's like some sort of patriotic recipe. I think it was like
Really?
George Washington's wife has a. It was
Oh,
floating
really?
around. There's this great eggnog debate between all the various happenings this week on the internet. There was a debate about eggnog. You know, there's a debate about a squirrel. I was thinking we can get into. I had a couple of really interesting threads about this squirrel because the squirrel was sacrificed by New York State, but apparently the government likes to go around and just slaughtering animals if you don't abide by their bureaucratic rules.
That was really sad. Yeah, that's really sad. I wonder if there's more to the story.
Well, yeah, so there's not confirmation, but it appears that the woman who put in the complaints about this squirrel that I think was several years old has been fostered from, childhood.
Oh yeah, it was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they lived that long.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you tend to them and you keep the cats away, they can persist. But he was an internet star. Apparently, allegedly, this woman in Texas was really upset that the squirrel was more popular than her and made repeated complaints about the squirrel to the Department of Air, Land, and Sea Beasts or whatever it is. Department of Wildlife or maybe PETA or whatever it is. And then they rounded up the squirrel. They spent 5 hours. They did a police raid on this guy. Oddly enough, he has an OnlyFans account, so his he had a double internet life. One as a squirrel tender,
and prostitute.
Brostitute.
I guess
he was a himbo, apparently. Not to water down.
No.
The language.
Whatever.
But the funny thing about it is that the news hit yesterday, and the memes went crazy. There's just a crazy amount of memes about this poor squirrel, and the psychology of it is pretty interesting about who was the ones who took up the plight of the squirrel. And there's this really interesting heat map that I always share because it's so interesting to me.
That.
I like it. I want it to become a cliche enough so that I can reference it, and it got popular enough. So basically, it's a heat map. There's concentric circles, and it is this. From what I understand, it's a sociological study. People who self-identify as conservative or self-identify as liberal rate how much importance they have in these concentric circles, starting with their family and then extending to the universe. And liberals tend to vocalize more empathy for that which is further away, and conservatives tend to vocalize empathy for that which is closer to home. And it was interesting for me because the squirrel ignited the conservative, the right wing, whatever that is. And what is that? Why would the conservatives, if this heat map is to be believed, why would the conservatives place the squirrel at the front and center?
Because it's the pet. It's a pet. It's in the home. It's family.
Yeah. But isn't that weird? Because there's cat ladies, but then there's squirrel poppies, Squirrel paps.
Well, I think it would be similar if there was a big story about somebody having their cat taken away and euthanized. I mean, do you not think so?
No, I think it's interesting. It's just like there's layers of memes to that. And there's something about the squirrel death that like, it just made me really sad.
Yeah.
Like there's an emotional content to it.
Well, because it's this totally innocent little creature.
Yeah, you didn't do nobody no harm.
I wonder what else is going on with that story though.
There's more to the story. I'm sure.
Is it just this gross government overreach and this, this assault on an innocent family?
Alan Peterson says the authorities came and managed to do the maximum damage possible. There are like there's various levels of parody tweets about like white people caring more about the squirrel than George Floyd, and then the counter tweet
Oh my
is like,
gosh.
well, the squirrel never pointed a gun at a pregnant lady's belly.
Okay.
Another meme is that more investigation went into prosecuting the squirrel than any single person on the Epstein client list.
Oh man.
Which is another one. There's this there, and it validates this theory. I can't remember who the theory is from.
The pettiness of bureaucratic government,
called anarcho-tyranny, where if you are chokeholding a bum that's threatening people, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But if you're an innocent squirrel tender, then you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So that they'll let a lot of anarchy persist for the people who don't pay attention to the laws anyways, but the people who are more susceptible to abiding by the law are the ones who are prosecuted.
Well, it's a lower level of complexity in terms of what was going on in that situation. I mean, if you have something like a code that regulates what kind of wildlife you can have in human domicile, like a wildlife code, like this guy is, we have, for whatever reason, we've decided some animals are friends, some animals are food, and some animals are wild.
Garments.
Yeah. And so if you've got some kind of code that regulates that, it's really simple. It's like there's our crazy chickens escaping their coop right now.
Yeah. I don't
but
think people can see them.
You can have like here. No, you probably can't see them. That's not the camera.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to mess with their camera.
So we have, I think, a law or code, a municipal code here in our city, our little town, that says you can have, I believe it's 8 domestic fowl or 11 domestic fowl, something like that. It's like this really specific number. And so it's really simple. It's not, I wouldn't say from an ethical standpoint. Now there's lots of ethical questions, but legally it's very simple to crack down on that. And I think that bureaucracy loves the simple answer because it allows you to rubber stamp something without any complexity. You don't have to go to somebody higher. I mean, the Epstein thing, that's anything but simple. It's a whole bunch of intermingled interests that have to do with your higher ups. Like, who is that guy that dismissed the case against Epstein, and he's horribly entangled in the whole, was it a judge? I don't remember this story very well, so I'm not going to be able to do it any justice, but he was indicted or charged a couple of times and kept having things dismissed because of the entanglements that his clientele had.
Well, we can reference Daryl Cooper's Epstein.
That's a really good
episode.
one. Did you listen to that?
Yeah, I listened to that. It was interesting. I should have finished Fear and Loathing for our interview, but I did that one. That was really interesting. But yeah, the CIA, whenever the CIA or the FBI, I think it was, whenever the FBI, lower level FBI agents would go after Epstein, higher ups would say, don't touch him. He's an asset.
Yeah. So it became bureaucratically complex.
Yeah.
Whereas the squirrel situation, if you've got all these people, I think what happened is horrible. I think it's horrible that they went into this family's home and took their pets and killed them.
Yeah.
No matter what. I mean, maybe if they felt like they needed to hold the pets for a little while they figured things out.
Yeah, no, they
just killed them right away, which is horrific to me.
Yeah.
But I wonder sometimes if in a bureaucracy, there's such a diffusion of responsibility that when people finally have something that they can actually act on,
that's a good point.
There's kind of a discharge of tension that goes into that. Yes, we can, and we can no pun intended, but we can execute this plan.
Yeah, I have power, and I get to fulfill the power.
But I wonder what else was going on in that story, because whenever something seems to be portrayed as like all good and evil, I have to wonder what else is going on. What was there something besides just a squirrel that made them raid this guy's house for 5 hours?
Yeah.
And if he's a porn star too, I mean, what's going on? I don't know.
Yeah.
I just wonder what else is happening.
Boners abound in this one.
Well, how do you mean abound?
I don't know. There's a bunch of prickly issues about that. So what you're saying is that there's probably more to that actual case.
There potentially is.
But I think there's also potentially more in why that ignited such like an expression. I think just like you were saying with the bureaucrats being able to execute, making a decision about this simple thing, it collects these boxes and they can just run after and execute this plan. I think with the level of the story as a meme, it's like finally we have something that we can rally around. It can really
But who's
punch.
we here? And that's one of the questions I have is, are we in an echo chamber when we're seeing this? Like how many accounts are sharing this? It's got a bunch of stuff on Twitter, tons of likes and people sharing it. But is that being shared within a bubble? And is it really a conservative bubble or what is it? I mean, it hasn't, I don't know if it's a
Okay,
national
well,
story.
I can't answer that question.
Mhm.
I don't have the data at my fingertips, but it's objectively verifiable that it exploded as a
Yeah.
story, and millions and millions and millions of views and
Millions?
interactions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
millions, hundreds of thousands,
Hmm.
and then in aggregate, millions of people have heard about this. This one image, or this one story exploded and
Hmm.
got an aggregate of attention to it because I think it's something that we could easily execute on. We can easily say,
Yeah, we can,
this
it's easy
thing
for
right
everybody
here.
to make a judgment on.
Yeah, and even though, so I guess there is some people arguing back and forth on like the niceties of the thing. Is the person that people are, internet detectiving and blaming is the right person? Is that verifiable? But when you step back 2 days ago, when Trump went out of his way to be egregious and say that Liz Cheney should take up a rifle and have 9 rifles pointed at her face, I don't think he executed that quote well because it was so easily to clip out and say that Donald Trump wants Liz Cheney executed, which is one thing that you can agree or disagree on. But what he was trying to say is that these people up in this Pentagon, these war hawks, are sending people out to die. We're going to
Hmm.
move 10,000 troops around. They're playing this board game with actual people's
With real
lives.
people.
And so why don't they ever put themselves in the ring, which is a Democrat talking point, or at least an anti-war talking point back when,
Hmm.
Bush invaded Iraq. Why not just
Yep.
have Bush and Saddam shoot it out? Why do we have to execute hundreds of thousands of people's
Hmm.
lives and thousands of hundreds of thousands of totally screw up the Middle East for years and years and decades to come, and then also inflict upon our soldiers tons of pain. For what? For what benefit? And then you have to do the calculus. Well, are these war hawks actually in America's interests, like the average American? Are we better off for that? I don't know how you calculate that.
Hmm. Hmm. I missed that, so I don't know how he said that. I didn't catch it and have a reaction to it,
Trump
but
about
yeah,
Cheney, yeah.
yeah.
But the media ran with that as, this is the point. We're gonna rally around this quote, or at least this story about this quote.
I think there's so much desperation in the days before an election.
Yeah. Do you feel it?
Yeah, I've been trying to kind of stay away from it. I mean, like
Mm.
we were talking about the other day, I've been trying to be relaxed and calm about it because there's nothing we can do to change it. We already turned in our ballots. We've done the little part we can do,
Yeah.
and now we just wait and see what happens
Yeah.
and um, try to be prepared for whatever might be the outcome
Yeah.
and not catastrophize it. Who's
It's hard not to catastrophize.
the super chat?
Wait, hold on. I
Okay,
got it. I'm on it. I'm on it.
you're
Fluffing my
on it.
pillow.
Oh yeah.
Pillow fluffer. Um, to go back a little bit, the spoon, or the aristocratic utensil, says, "I'm under the impression the cat ladies, for the cat ladies, the cats are theirs, whereas the local squirrel is a member of the community." That's kind of an interesting thing. Like, who
Interesting.
did that squirrel belong to? Did it just belong to the one himbo, or did it belong to the community, the 150,000 subscribers that he had?
I don't know. I don't
Do
know.
my
That's
cats
a good
belong to
question.
me, or do they belong to everybody on my channel who watches videos of the cats? And we all partake in the ownership or the delight of this
Well, animals
one
have
creature.
their own sort of symbolism too, and personality as like an icon, right? Like a dog. When you think about a dog, you think about a different thing than a cat. When you
Mm-hmm.
think about a squirrel, you think about a different thing than a cat. And the squirrel has, I mean, we were going to like get philosophical. What does
Yeah,
the
go
squirrel
ahead. Yeah, you
symbolize?
go
But what
Jungian.
does it symbolize? It's free.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's cute. They have their little hands. They look like little people hands. So
Yeah,
there's this dexterity to
yeah.
it, and
And it's also novel as a domesticated squirrel.
it's novel.
Yeah,
It's interesting that they would have
it's
that, and
probably
it's.
got different kind of personality than a cat or
Mhm.
a dog. Probably a little bit
We
more
just
like
had a
you're trying to.
conversation with somebody about this who had raised a squirrel. Who was it?
John. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying it was that they're about as intelligent as cats.
Mm-hmm.
and he lived with it for a while. He
Yeah, it
had
was
one.
funny. It would run around the house and stuff. I
Yeah,
remember I'd go over to his house
yeah, and
and
they
do
were
some.
it's responsive and
Yeah,
playful and all the things. So, and then Bodie killed a squirrel
yeah,
and left it on the doorstep, and that
yeah,
was really sad. I felt we were just dealing with squirrel issues
yeah,
here
yeah,
in the last
yeah.
couple of
It
weeks, so it's kind of
devastated you.
interesting.
Yeah,
Well, that's strong,
I
but
was.
it was sad. I
Well,
was
yeah.
sad
I was grateful that you let it
because I had
go.
been hanging out with the squirrels.
Yeah, we had a
We had a
big
bunch of
squirrel bowl
yeah,
of
we had a bunch of
nuts.
nuts just for the squirrels,
The
and then
boys really wanted to go out, and
turned out we
they
had
got
tempted them to their
they really
death.
got into nuts. Now they're in the mushrooms, getting all the mushrooms all over the place. I'll Fight You Naked, which is a YouTube account, says they executed Peanut, but steal an election? Never.
It's interesting that the bureaucrats who killed the squirrel are being equated with the Democrats. That's interesting to
No, it
me.
is very interesting. I think that's another level of the discourse, that it's evincing this deep distrust that the people who identify in the conservative camp, or who are voting for Republicans right now. Like, I interviewed Jimmy Kim, a lot of erstwhile Democrats are going over to Trump because they saw the overreach of these bureaucracies.
Mm.
And it's interesting, even there's this one guy, Spangler. He's a pretty spicy right wing guy. I think it's not Spangler. It's Spandrel.
Okay.
He was all for kind of a more fascist centralized authority as a way to make government more efficient and put it in its lane
Mm-hmm.
in a way. And then when he saw, it was really interesting because he's like, okay, I have to revise my point of view, because in the wake of COVID and how the worst people possible got the most power and had the most power in that situation, actually I want less and less government. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that with regard to the people who are voting for Trump, they see in Trump the icon of somebody who has the power to efficientize the government and to stand up against the so-called swamp, the so-called deep state, to curtail this bureaucratic overreach, this regulatory overreach, and then this moral overreach from our betters in the Democratic Party, or whoever the Democratic Party represents. These people who have so much power, who are not accountable,
Mm-hmm.
who write the laws and then fulfill the laws or execute the laws basically according to something that's not consistent. People are not being treated well by their government. And I think that the squirrel comes through as this moment, like even the animals are not safe, And there's something really
Mm-hmm.
interesting where we denigrate the cat ladies, but then we'll take up the champion of the squirrel in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
there are these different Gadsden flags where, there's the snake, the Gadsden,
Mm-hmm.
don't tread on me. And
Mm-hmm.
then the cat ladies came and made the meme. Well,
Oh, I didn't see this.
I'll tread on whoever I want, darling. And then somebody else has
Mm.
put a bird on top and says, like hell you will.
Oh, really?
And now the squirrel is like, don't take my nuts or whatever,
Uh,
So
well, I wonder also if there's some aspect of this issue that relates to the owner being a man, and so we see this thing that we don't see very often right now is this. You're getting to watch this man be
husbanding.
well, yeah, he's nurturing and he's loving and he's expressing affection with this little creature.
Yeah.
And he's really masculine. So this like beefy workout dude
Yeah.
who it with all of his masculine energy takes a moment to show this tender affection for this little thing. And when we've been demonizing men, and especially white men, he's a white dude.
Yeah.
You see this symbol of positive masculinity, if you will. Like, let's set aside the fact that he does whatever he does with porn, or I that just came up. I didn't know that that was the case. So, but what you see on the surface anyway is a strong, capable, handsome guy who has all of that in the backdrop, but then also has this tender, affectionate, fatherly kind of thing for this really innocent creature.
Yeah.
Versus the cat lady. And we've been that's interesting too, because as much as we've been calling masculinity toxic, there's the same swell of anti-feminine. There's this the cat lady is the Karen, right?
Yeah.
And the longhouse thing that
toxic
people,
femininity.
yeah, that's something that
being executed by our government, by the bureaucracy.
And there's been this fight. I think you're never going to find one without the other. There's the men versus women. It's the war of the sexes thing. That's just as old as it's a very old trope, and it always kind of plays off of itself. There's this pendulum swing, and we're never going to solve it by putting one side down. It's not going to work. We have to bring everybody up. But it's easy right now. It's like a pendulum swing. It's easy to hate on the women and the cat ladies.
I think that's a really good point about the dude being a husband, like in the sense of like animal husbandry. If
Mm,
you ever played Civilization, which is a computer game, there's a
mm.
board game aspect of it. You know, like you have all these technology tracks, and one of the technology tracks in very early
Oh,
civilization is
yeah.
animal husbandry.
Okay.
You're like tending to the
Yeah,
animals, and so the masculine tending to this tiny little creature has a very evocative
it
power.
does.
And I think that maps on to JD Vance and Trump in a symbolic way.
Mm,
When Trump, this is another thing that he got blasted on. He said that I'm going to protect women,
mm.
and he said that, and I don't remember the full quote, but he was saying about illegal immigrants coming over, raping and murdering women. I'm going to protect women, and they say, and he was talking about how his pollster says, "Don't say that. The women don't like that. The women don't like when you
Oh,
say
but
that, when
the
you talk that
Democrats say
way."
that all the
And
time.
he says, "Well, I don't care what the women want. I'm going to protect them."
Okay.
And then the left or the Democrats construed that as him oppressing them through the abortion rights.
Oh,
And Kamala, on the other hand, Kamala is this symbol of the feminine government in a really interesting kind of symbolic way. She is
mm.
this HR woman. She's vetted by the institution. The institution has your side. She's going to protect you. She's going to protect the government's going to be used to protect people, protect the
Well, in
environment.
all of their ads, I mean, like they keep using, like, did you see there was that ad that showed women getting to have the one place that a woman in America has her voice is in the ballot box.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we talked about this on my channel a couple of days ago. We went in and into this ad. I think we even showed it. Oh no, 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 we didn't. We didn't. That was in a solid ground. We had a group. It was a private chat. But we were talking about this ad where there's this voiceover that says the one place in America women still have a voice. And so the husband is this MAGA guy
Yeah.
who's like, honey, you're gonna make the right choice. And she says, of course I am. And then she gets into the ballot and she makes eye contact with another woman
Yeah.
and they have this knowing glance. And then they both choose Harris Waltz.
And then
And
it
then they
says
walk
you
out.
can vote for whoever you want, but make the right decision or something like
They
that.
did another one too with a man.
Yeah.
And he's
Make
going in with
America
all
great
his,
again.
his redneck friends. And they're like, yeah, we're going to go. And then he makes eye contact with another man. And
Well,
then he
his daughter says,
glances.
"Hey, Daddy," and
Yeah.
he says, "Hold on a
And he
second."
glances at his family
Yeah.
on his phone. It's, but his little girl that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the manipulation. It's using this little girl as the symbol of we are going to protect her.
Yeah.
But how?
Yeah.
By guaranteeing that she has no regulation whatsoever on her right to an abortion. That is like that's the way that we
Yeah.
protect women.
Yeah. Protect women by allowing your daughter to execute
Well,
your grandchild.
we can use inflammatory or
Okay.
pro-life or pro-choice,
Yeah.
whatever direction we want,
You're right.
language around that.
You're right.
But just to bring it to what it is neutrally, it's an abortion rights, being the pinnacle of protecting women based on that one thing, not all the other stuff, not protecting them from government overreach, not protecting them from vaccine mandates or whatever else the government has in store, the bureaucratic state, which is, yeah, what Trump sort of symbolizes in a way is putting that in check. Whether he'd actually do that or not, I don't know. But
I was
he
hoping
didn't
we
do
were going
that
to
during
talk about
COVID, but
the election ads, because there's a spate of, and they are indistinguishable from parody. And
oh
there's three of
gosh,
them.
yes.
One is a woman dying on her front room rug from an ectopic pregnancy.
Oh, I didn't see that. I saw the thing and I didn't watch it.
And the guy calls 911, and 911 says she needs an abortion. And then the congressman shows up like, I was voted in, so you're not allowed to
I'm
have
your
that.
Republican congressman, probably. It's
Yeah, so
like the porn ad.
But okay, so there's three. They're all it's all the same guy coming in, the same senator. And the first one I saw was about a guy masturbating to porn.
Yeah.
Like this young white guy masturbating to porn. And then the guy shows up, says, "We're going to take that away."
Yeah, it's a really graphic ad too. I mean, he's really like, it's clear what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, there's no subtlety there.
Yeah. And then the second one is a woman getting off, a woman straddling a man. They're having sex.
Oh my.
And he's like, "Oh, the condom broke." And she's like, no, I have plan B. Go get the plan B. And he goes into the bathroom and he opens it up and he closes the mirror. And then the guy's there like, we're taking that away. Right. So
Oh my
it's
gosh.
all about this freedom to have responsibility less or irresponsible sex.
Sexual pleasure.
Sexual pleasure, sexual
So
gratification.
the first one is about, you can't take my virtual prostitution away from me.
Yeah.
If Republicans want to outlaw virtual prostitution. The second one is, you're going to take away my abortion pill. Yeah. And the third one, or it's not an abortion pill. It's like a contraception blocker or something like that, whatever at that point.
Yeah.
And then the third one is that if you actually have a medical emergency, they're gonna outlaw treatment based on their ideology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really.
And there's other memes about it where somebody's like, as a Japanese man, I find it fascinating that the only commercials that are all white are about abortion or masturbation.
Oh my gosh! Did you see the ad that was it like a Time magazine cover? I can probably find it.
Oh, about why we shouldn't have baby or the
two people, the child-free life.
Yes.
And somebody says, notice that they're white. Well, yeah, but a counterpoint to that might be that, as Deborah Knox was saying when I showed it to her, she said, well, probably that's statistically correct, that it would be more white people, Caucasian people choosing to not have children.
Mm-hmm. But when they promote family,
but still,
it's interracial family.
I found that that particular cover interesting, not because of the race of the two people, but because of the blatant promotion, the celebration of childlessness.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a tangent.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, it's the symbology of this stuff is really interesting. And
yeah, I guess it's actually not a tangent because all of those things point at the same thing, which is anti-natalism.
Yes. Well, and immediate gratification. Well, libertinism, mm-hmm. Sex work is work. Mm-hmm. It was really interesting because the ad about the guy masturbating, the way that it was promoted on Twitter was like, they don't let the Republicans control you.
It said men don't want to be controlled either.
Yeah, men don't want to be controlled.
And so the people who are putting out the ad were saying men don't want to be controlled either.
Yeah,
equating it to abortion. So they
are the ones, masturbation, to access to pornography.
Yeah, they're equating masturbation to abortion.
Oh yeah,
because that's the implicit thing. Like when we talk about the control functions of women's bodies, now they're saying we made this ad to show that men don't want their bodies controlled either. Yeah. So they are equating. They are the ones who are drawing that connection between pregnancy, abortion, pornography and masturbation.
Yeah. The whole thing. Mm-hmm. And what I responded kind of glibly is that if a man doesn't want to be controlled, he has to control himself. Because it was really interesting, and you've done a lot of research in talking about this, about the way that pornography hijacks and manipulates one, and the way that it's set up to do that. The ad of the guy masturbating, and then the Republican coming in, and then they're saying, don't let them control you. It's like the guy is just as hypnotized by the stimulus. He's just as much controlled by the pornography, but he's willfully giving himself over to it. Mm-hmm. So it's still his agency. He's investing his agency into this pornographic loop. Yeah. And so he's being manipulated. And so that it's just really interesting that whoever this ad firm is kind of like displaying this nest of, we're going to control you, but in a way that's better for you. Get in the pod, be a bug man. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's
don't take responsibility
that government in any way would take that position, that your government wants to secure your access to that particular thing.
Yeah.
Which is, there are so many layers there. Yeah. First of all, it's what it's doing to men. The sapping of energy, the pulling them away from family, the destroying of intimate relationships by the diversion of male sexual energy, the corruption of young men and boys, not to mention girls, but that's a whole nother track, I suppose. But it's causing so many problems, but we can't talk about that. All we can do is talk about this young man who's gleefully jacking off. Yeah. And his right to continue to do that. And then you have the layers of what is the material that he's viewing? What does that represent?
Yeah, there was a bunch of women moaning.
You have a right to prostitution. You have a right to that woman who was paid for a sex act. So you have a right to her.
Mhm.
What does that say? I mean, protect women. I don't know. It's just there's
Mm.
so many layers to this.
Let's check out the chat.
Okay.
Point curation, super chat. Thank you. Pair character doing a shaka sign with his hand saying cool.
Hmm.
Okay. William Barry piped in, fish and wildlife codes are important because of lax codes. Florida is getting overrun by all kinds of invasive animals.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these laws for a reason. It's absolutely true. It's interesting that became so political. Gay Odyssey. Did you see JD Vance quote on the gays? MAGA
Oh,
2024.
yeah, about
You want to
the
go on?
average gay guy or something
Yeah,
like that. Normal
he
gays.
secured the normie gay vote.
Mhm.
I was speaking with Jamie Reed and Eliza Mondegreen, and I'll have that episode out soon. There were some connection issues, so I need to edit it. But Jamie was saying in response to that, that a lot of her gay friends don't want to be thought of as normie. They're like, well, I'm not normie, but I do have his, he does have, I am on his side, JD Vance's side. And we had this long conversation about the queer, the marginal, and the normal, and how the queers or the gays or these the gender non-conforming people kind of implicitly understand or have gotten comfortable with being on the margins because of the bullying and being kind of like just not fitting into society, that when you call them normal, they kind of balk against that. Like, actually, I'm not normal.
Well, as a political identity, I guess part of the goal is to put oneself outside of whatever is normal.
Yeah. But then you want to enshrine that queerness as the central idol of
which
our
would continue
government.
to push the marginal in towards the center, which would be the act of normalizing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny's going to eat inky with it. I have to figure out how to darken these titles. Do you want to read that while I do this?
Oh,
real
sure,
quick?
sure. Let's see. The squirrel died, and raccoon, is it? She put little emojis. Died to check for rabies because they bit authorities. They had a warrant to search. The owners were in process of paperwork to make it legal, at least according to sources.
Okay, and the squirrel and raccoon died to check for rabies because they bit authorities. Oh, yeah. They had a warrant to search. The owners were in process of paperwork to make it legal, at least according to sources.
Well, I mean, if you came into our house right now and raided our cats, I bet I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how rough you were. They might bite you.
It was some creek thing that you were talking about the FBI shot a dog.
Ruby Ridge. Ruby Ridge. And you'd never heard of that. I bet a lot of people know the Ruby Ridge story.
Yeah, but
it's really tragic.
The whole series of events came down when the dog started to attack the marshals, and then the marshal shot the dog, and then shot the boy who shot at them, and then it was just this cascade.
They were like staking out the guy's cabin, and they shot his dog. I don't remember how that started. Maybe the dog was growling at them or something like that. And the little boy, who was 14, was out, and he had a gun. He was armed, and when somebody shot his dog, he shot at them, and so they shot and killed the little boy, and that was kind of how that whole siege started. They keep on doing it. All that stands between you and the government is a wee timorous beastie. It strikes a chord. Yeah.
Okay, so we covered election weirdness. That was all I had to show up with.
That's all you had?
Yeah.
Just election weirdness.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. There's a lot of weird, sticky polling things going around. Twitter's basically useless right now. Everybody is so at a fever pitch. They're literally rabid that everybody's just talking about one thing, and it's really boring. Interesting. It's overstimulating. It's interesting to be involved in this platform for 7 years now, and you see there's these peaks of anxiety where everybody where it's just this madness, and then it gets kind of dull, and you're like, oh, this is kind of boring in here. And then it happens again, and there's just these peaks and troughs of people unifying their attention about various different things. Vapor Trail says Elon has posted about Peanut about 10 times since yesterday. That's what blew it up. House GOP account posted justice for Peanut. So it might be Elon has an oversized power right now. It's really interesting. Democrat run government, this is Vapor Trails, Democrat ran government won't prosecute violent crime in New York City, but will kill a pet squirrel. So I wonder if that will decide the election. I wonder if anything's going to decide the election. I wonder if the election's even going to be decided.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder what's going to happen after
It
Tuesday.
has to be too big to rig, or else it's going to be shenanigans all the way down. It's just going to be this long, drawn out process. And I think I'm trying to think what's going to happen if Harris does get in by hook, crook, or by valid, verifiable majority on some level. Um, the erosion of free speech protections, the continued extension of the government. I don't think she'll actually be able to do anything or be known for having done anything. I think the government hasn't been run at all for the last 3 months. We know that, and before then, it was obvious that Biden didn't really have the cognitive ability to actually run that thing that's called the government. So it's just going to continue going the way it's going to
Yeah,
go.
it's clear to me that Harris and co don't have any kind of charisma or any kind of anything that would compel people to get really excited about them. And so they've just been sinking their teeth into issues like abortion, basically this
Yeah.
whole sexual I freedom
License. Yeah.
idea that is kind of their whole thing. It's just to scare and rile people
Yeah.
up so that they feel, or it's that and to scare people about Trump
Yeah.
directly. So it's all negative politics. It's all put down the other guy.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to offer except if you let that guy in, he's going to take away things that are important to you.
Yeah. I did have a dream. I don't know if this is meaningful to anybody other than my nighttime imagination, but this morning I had a dream that Trump got elected. I was a part of the administration. We had so much work to do, and there's so much energy involved in it. I was tasked with helping the union. Like he was doing a bunch of things to sort out the unions to put them back in their place, and he had a team on that. But there's so many different, so much energy and activity was going on, and there was like this really high verve vibe going. It was really exciting, and I was like part of it. I'm like, wow, I wish I had a job like this. And Tim Waltz was. We were talking about, well, how are we going to deal with the Harrison Waltz and stuff, and well, because somehow they still had influence. And so I was talking about how, well, actually we have to mitigate their power in every single way possible. And I turned around and Tim Waltz was right there, and he reached over and he started to like tickle me. And it was really
He was pervy.
he was perving on me. It was really gross. I'm like, could you get up? And then I stood up. I'm like, everybody, he was touching me. Like, get him away from me. It was this really weird.
You were molested by
I was
Waltz in your
molested
dream.
by Waltz. There's something about that guy that gives me the ick.
Yeah.
And there's something about Kamala that doesn't really give me the ick, but I'm just like, she just makes me cringe so hard. But
she gives you the ugh.
yeah, the Waltz, there's something weird about him. It was unfortunate that there was some sort of weird psyop about him being gay and doing something wrong, but it turned out that he did have some affair with a Chinese official's daughter or something. That maybe that was a rumor too. But there's something about that guy that just, I don't want him representing us. I really don't want him representing us. And there can't be a bigger difference between two candidates as there are between Waltz and J.D. Vance.
Oh, yeah, Vance seems really competent.
You were listening to his Rogan?
Yeah, I was. The only, I guess, he seems competent. The only thing I kept thinking during that interview, this guy swears a lot. And maybe he's doing that to kind of appeal to Joe Rogan and what his perception of Rogan's audience is. But he's swearing a ton, like way more than a professional person ought to do. I thought it was maybe a little bit too folksy. Yeah, like he's trying a little too hard. I don't know. It felt a little bit I don't know. But I like him. I think he seems like from what he says, he sounds like a reasonable person.
Competent.
Yeah, he seems competent, and he seems like he's actually concerned about things that regular people are concerned about. So he doesn't seem like this unrelatable, untouchable government guy. But I wondered about that. Was the one little thing that seemed a little strange to me. Like, what is this was he playing at? Because he's too professional to be swearing like that.
Yeah, he's code switching, and it's a little too obvious
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. Like, who do you think you're talking to? A little bit. I don't know. I
Yeah.
wonder what other people thought about
I
that.
I was watching it, but they talked so much about the trans issue. I'm like, okay. I kept on fast forwarding it, and then
They
I
only
didn't get
talked
back.
about that for a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it
Because then
felt
they
like
get
half
on
an hour.
windmills and
Okay,
all kinds of
windmills.
other
Okay,
stuff.
yeah. I got stuck there because I'm like, oh, I'm
You've
so
already
tired
been
of
there,
that
done that
issue.
too
I've
much.
been there, done that. I still do that on my channel.
But normal people have not.
No, so
I mean,
it's
that's kind
great
of
that
been a
that's,
niche thing.
it was really interesting. There was a bit in the gender corner of the internet, there was a bit of a hubbub about autogynephilia, like actually
Oh,
crossing the line, and Rogan bringing it up and
interesting.
kind of breaking open
Yeah, he talked about
that
it. In that,
level of
yeah.
analysis of the trans discourse to a
Mm-hmm.
broader
Mm-hmm.
audience, which is, it's a very niche. The autogynephilia is a super niche thing, but if you look at the oversized footprint of trans in the discourse, it is related to that. It's highly capable, highly intelligent. AGPs tend to have above average intelligence. They're highly
Is that right?
intelligent, and then there is some
Hmm.
comorbidities with other personality dark triad traits.
Mm-hmm.
There's the dark
Mm-hmm.
triad, and there's this other thing. Like there's, narcissistic personality,
Like
borderline
like the
personality,
cluster B thing.
cluster B and dark triad. I always like
Oh, okay.
mix those two things up because it's just this psychobabble lingo. It's like,
Yeah, it's interesting. I had this really fantastic conversation with Josh Slocum the other day
mm-hmm.
that I'll put up next week. Um, and one of the things we were talking about was how did we get from just 10 years ago, gay marriage wasn't even legal to in the US across the country. It was like 2015, I think, when we
Ratified or
yeah,
whatever.
when
Yeah.
we cracked that code open. Um,
Oh, this is what you wanted to talk about.
Well, I thought it was really interesting. I was thinking about the conversation that I'd had with him, and one of the things that, he was bringing up some things around that. And I said, did we necessarily have to go here? Because this was the slippery slope
Yeah, that's one way
argument.
of perceiving
There
it.
was that slippery slope, and I was very much I was very much in favor of legalization of same-sex marriage at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He brought up we should never have called it marriage. We should have just stuck with civil unions because marriage is it's a sacrament, it's a spiritual union. Civil is what the state has to offer you. How does the
Yeah.
state get involved in something
Yeah.
that's more than that? But I was in favor at the time, very in favor of allowing same-sex couples to legalize their marriages,
Union. Yeah.
their unions,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever you called it. And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
in favor of it being marriage because I just didn't think about this that way at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Do you think that it necessarily had to go like this? Was this inevitable? The slide that we've had into complete sexual, I guess, amorality, like this. We don't have a thing that we can say people ought to do anymore at all. Like we can't even say you ought to get married and have children, or you ought to not have sex outside of marriage, or any of the things that would have been really normal things culturally for people to say.
That's how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, think about like when we were young, when we were kids. It would have been a normal thing for people to say this is that represents good sexual morality. You could have had a lesson on that. We probably did in school. They probably talked about it this way at that time. And now it's like, well, we can't really tell you, we have to respect all identities and orientations, including BDSM and polyamory. And, counselors can't say that you shouldn't cheat on your wife.
Don't yuck my yum.
Don't, yeah, exactly. And my question was it inevitable? Because that's what the dreaded conservatives at that time, when we were arguing for the legalization of gay marriage, were saying. They were saying, if you allow this, you're going to have marriages with more than two people. You're going to have the gates will open and you'll have all kinds of kink that will just be allowed, and pedophilia and bestiality, and everything will be on the table if you let this in. And at the time I thought, that's ridiculous. We're still talking about two people who love each other being able to officialize that love and that connection, that commitment to each other. And I wonder what has happened in 10 short years that has completely changed the landscape. I mean, now
Mm-hmm.
you can't say that it's not okay to look at porn. You can't even say that. It's
Mm-hmm.
that's just a norm now in our
Mm-hmm.
country. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a normal
Yeah, it's a
thing.
joke. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Yeah.
The BDSM thing, the pride is now everything. It's all kinds of things. It's not just about being gay, it's about being kinky and having your kink be on the outside. And it's like, I am this kind of person. I identify with my sexual interests
Mm-hmm.
as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what that represents. And one of the things that it might represent is that instead of locking in some kind of morality at that time, like, yes, we as a culture are saying that we recognize that some people choose to partner with someone of the same sex, but we're going to emphasize that partnership. We're going to emphasize that we still culturally want to uh, celebrate or focus on the legitimacy of a two-person union. I don't know if there was a way that we could have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, what we kind of did was say, it's hard to be this kind of thing, this heterosexual thing, this
Monogamous and
monogamous
heterosexual.
hetero.
Yeah.
And some people are just different from that. And so we have to give them a pass. We just have to say they're fundamentally different. They're so different from that. They're just built differently. And so they just get a pass. And I think what that did in a way is it's it's hard for almost everybody for lots of different reasons. It's hard. I don't think that there are very many people, and probably most of them are women, I'm just going to say, who are built for heterosexual monogamy. Just that they don't find it difficult. Like, argue with me if you think that I'm wrong. I would love to hear
I
that.
know better than that. And plus, I don't want to
No, I'm just saying that it's a
mess around with
challenge
your
for everybody.
nature.
That's why I just listened to this part of this interview with Esther Perel on Andrew Huberman's show. I've never watched him, but somebody put up a link to this, and I like her a lot. She's this couples therapist who's really, really, really brilliant, and has a great way of, cutting to the underlying issues. And she's saying that the way that we do relationships now in contemporary culture, most people have 2 or 3 marriages in their lifetime. So sometimes to the same person is how she put it. So basically, demonstrating that we go through such changes and we shift in such fundamental ways that our relationships have to shift too. And sometimes the relationship doesn't survive that, and so we end up in a different relationship, and throughout our lives. You and I could both say that that's the case for us. I
Mm-hmm.
think I know, and a lot of people can, but just acknowledging that it is really difficult to stay in a marriage that is heterosexual and monogamous throughout your life. If we don't acknowledge that, then we're not being honest.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of reasons why that's challenging, especially in modern culture, without the limitations and the barriers to divorce. It's really easy for us to split and go a different way. Once you said, here's a group of people who have a pass and they can be held to a completely different social standard. They're not expected to do this thing.
Yeah.
I just think that a lot of other people started lining up and putting their hand up and saying, me too. I also have a hard time with that for such a fundamental reason. This is why you hear, is AGP a fetish or is it an orientation? That word orientation is like, I'm just made that way. I'm sorry. I need to be excused from this thing. And then once you can say, I have a fundamental orientation that makes your cultural norms
Mm-hmm.
impossible for me, then
Mm-hmm.
you must enshrine that also.
Mm-hmm.
And soon we are respecting by making not only sort of like allowances for or ignoring or letting go some things that people might do, but we have to front and center them and celebrate them and explicitly embrace, accept, and tolerate these things. And so now you have everything on the table. What else is an orientation? Is BDSM an orientation? Is pornography, voyeuristic sexuality, is that an orientation? I think it's very interesting to think about how we got from where we were to where we are right
Yeah.
now.
I'm thinking there's probably some excellent write-ups about the orientation. One way of defining what the right wing is that it's for order and the left wing is for entropy. And when you don't reinforce an order, then what you're going to have is increasing entropy. And order is by definition difficult, and entropy is by definition easy. And so if you want to have an order, then you have to tie the order to some sort of narrative that is either true or false, or believed in or not believed in. And so the heterosexual, monogamous narrative or myth or standard in enforcing that order is, the first order business is to enforce the order. Second order business is to justify the order.
Mm-hmm.
You could really easily say that monogamy and heterosexuality are, you could probably look at data and say what's the best for children and what's the best for society.
Mm-hmm. Human flourishing.
Human flourishing. What's the best for individual children growing up in which homes? And
Mm-hmm.
what's the best for women
Mm-hmm.
and what's the best for men? And at scale.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and a lot of the problems that we have with the data coming out about just the post-sexual revolution and where the millennials find themselves and Gen Zs find themselves with the way that the dating market or the meat market or that whole mate market is shaking out. It's like people are increasingly less happy. The people who are happy are the very few. And the most people are just kind of dealing with less and less or more scraps
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
there's not that reinforcement. It's like you can do whatever you want. Now,
Mm-hmm.
polyamory and various sorts of paraphilias or non-monogamous sexual encounters or multiple sexual encounters, those things are one data set, but it's also like if you just look at the people who are seeking heterosexual mate hookups and what they want out of life and what makes them most happy, is probably it's going to shake out that for most of society and for most societies, it's best that it's monogamous and heterosexual because reasons, right? So if you have that, then you have to maintain that order. And in order to maintain the order and to enforce the order, what you have to have some sort of cultural leverage. And how is that leverage? Where does that leverage come from? This is where we get into the politics of the situation. And this is where we get into
Mm-hmm.
where the conservatives are not. They are. So we go back to those commercials where the Democrats are saying if you elect the Republicans, you're not going to be able to jerk off anymore. You're not going to be able to get out of inconvenient pregnancies, and you're not going to get out of life concerning pregnancies. And there was some chart that I saw today that broke down what abortions actually happen, and it's like 80% is just elective. 80% of it's where they're using the outlier, the ectopic pregnancy, as a justification for all
An
these different
ectopic
things.
pregnancy, I'm sorry, that's not a medical abortion. That's just not in any way a
Listen,
medical abortion.
and
That's a
a
weird thing.
woman that I was going to read about that squirrel issue, she said that I had an ectopic pregnancy, that it was aborted, and it was not illegal because there other
I
people are
had an
saying it's illegal.
ectopic pregnancy. It
Yep.
wasn't aborted. It ruptured, and then I had to have an emergency surgery. It was there's no baby in your uterus when you have an ectopic pregnancy. It's in your tube. It's coming ectopic is it's outside of the uterus somewhere. It could be in the abdomen somewhere. Usually it's in the fallopian tube. It's there's no viability whatsoever. Medical science doesn't have a way to put that into the uterus.
Mhm.
It's just going to it grows until the body can't handle it, the body can't nourish it, and then it explodes and you both die
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
if they don't intervene. It's not an abortion, it's just a different thing.
So we kind of discussed the position that they're taking now, and it's harried
Mm-hmm.
and it's urgent. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not really thought through, and we can poke through it. But what they're promising is that you can be assured that the state is going to protect your right to your fluids and your body, and your body is just going to be able to do whatever you want to, up to and including transing yourself when you're 12 years old. That's not being a part of their commercials. They backed away from that, but that will certainly continue to persist. And the DOJ under Harris will continue to prosecute people based on these things. And there's a lot of court cases going on. We'll see how those shake out. What are the Republicans or the conservative or the counter? What is the counter to that? Is anybody selling you freedom? Like, what kind of freedom are they selling you? And I think that Trump was talking about, like, I don't know if they know what they're trying to sell as counter, but the closing the borders. So some sort of stabilizing our country as our country, some sort of return to an orientation towards what it is to be an American that has more explicitness rather than openness to it. So it's a contraction from there. No human is illegal. No act is immoral. To there are legal and illegal standards. Morality, however, is another discussion. It's upstream from that.
How do we have politics involved in determining cultural morality? That seems like you've already got
something we constantly talk about in these conversations. We've constantly talked about that. And I think that we just hung out with Dave Green, the distributist, one of my favorite YouTubers, and a great essayist, and his wife, Helen. Lovely people. We met them in person. It's always fun to meet people in person. You're like, whoa, you're totally different.
People from the internet.
Yeah, people from the internet. Yeah. And Dave is very, very right wing. He's Catholic. He's what I told him is, like, he laid the groundwork for a lot of the E-right about 10 years ago. He was way ahead of the curve, and he laid the groundwork that a lot of other people are working within. And it wasn't that he was necessarily original. He was just very capable of translating text into the video format and bringing it up into the conversational format. And so his work is absolutely essential. If you're really interested in understanding what the E-right or the dissident right, or what some people call the woke right is, go to his early work and check that out. But he is explicitly right-wing. He's explicitly nomian as opposed to antinomian, or for order as opposed to against order. And one way of categorizing left and right is that the left continues to be entropic and continues to kind of strip away social order in order to create some sort of authority and bureaucratic structure that then supports people's own manifestation of their own will. And so it's language based, because once the nominal is upset, the normative is upset, you have to have all this policing of the individual. And then Tower of Babel happens really quickly. And you see that in the pronoun debate, where nobody can understand anybody anymore because everybody just has to celebrate. Then that's the only way that the social fabric is maintained. But my point is that even Dave is still a liberal. He doesn't want to impose order on other people, because he knows that that's not the correct way to go about it. So I think that even the most rightist of rightist, basest of basest people, the smart ones, know that they cannot impose order on other people. We do live in a pluralistic society. But who gets to rule that marketplace of ideas? What is the morality that informs the liberal order? And that is a political project that's based on persuasion and consensus. And you could do coercion to a certain extent, but it's not going to be real if it's based on coercion. And that goes back to the men and the women problem. And we got into a debate about that. Like, what's women's role in the right wing? What's men's role in the right wing? And men have to take the lead in this. And the whole thing about that red pill, manosphere talk, that they spend a lot of time expressing their grievance about the system as it is, about the education system and academia and the way that men are being ground up, the divorce system, all that stuff. But they have to still go one step beyond grieving their loss and say, no, I'm going to create order for my family.
With a positive vision.
I have to have a positive vision. And I do believe that even though this might be insulting to women, women will be attracted to strong men, and they want to be led. And they also want, and in that being led, they will find men and women will both find that through a respectful heterosexual marriage or union, there is an information that there's an overlapping of the female typical vision and understanding of the world and the male typical vision and understanding of the world, and they both inform each other. And so, but there is, the man has to be attractive. It's the man's duty to instigate the order, and then the woman will, generally speaking, be attracted to that and then conform herself to that.
Generally, and I think that there's also there's room for exceptions.
There are difficult women. I'm not saying there aren't difficult women in the world. I would never say that.
I could say that it does seem correct that if this were ordered right, you would find mostly men in the lead, but I wouldn't say it would be all in leadership positions.
I think vastly. I think it would be vastly. I think the exception would be women.
But one of the things that I would say is that men don't get in the lead by spending their time fighting with women about that.
No.
Putting them down. And that's kind of the red pill thing has a lot of that. But
no.
You know, in terms of
unless you want women, you'll end up only with women who are wanting to put women down, and that's something we talked about at length. Women who put other women down, it's a manifestation of intrasexual competition. Yeah. It's kind of the pick me kind of thing. So
yeah, which is the flip side of the male feminist.
Yeah.
But that's a long topic. Maybe we could talk about that sometime.
Is it an entropic topic? In-topic topic. Is it just stuck in your tube somewhere? Yeah, let's just stick it back in the tube. Keep it save it later.
I do think that if you are in a very rigidly ordered society, then you are going to have individuals who bear the brunt of that disorder because it just somehow does not work for them. They are an outlier for whatever reason, whether it's circumstantially, temperamentally, whatever. This has left them through maybe no fault of their own, or maybe choices of their own, left out of the avenues that the rest of society has available to them. There are always going to be exceptions. And so you're going to have individuals that bear the brunt of a high degree of personal dysfunction and disorder in their life and agony for the rigidity of the walls around them. And if you have a very loosely ordered society that's not rigid, you're going to instead see sort of a diffusion of that same disorder that's going to be borne by many people in the society.
You think?
That kind of disorder is going to be, because it displaces the dysfunction from the individual who is marginalized within the rigid society into the society at large.
Because the society is more acceptable and then susceptible.
Lots of those questions.
The disorder is more acceptable, and therefore more people are susceptible.
Perhaps
to
so.
The disorder.
Perhaps
because it's not shamed out of people, or it's not put a kibosh on.
Think about
through social pressure.
Let's use just the pronoun issue for just an easy issue, right?
Okay.
So, like for a really long time, since I don't know the history of transsexualism, but it's been around for a long time. It's not an entirely modern issue. It had been born by a few individuals, this high degree of personal disorder and grief and difficulty in life. The few individuals who felt compelled by whatever it was that this was the way that they must live bore a lot of scrutiny and personal distress through trying to just, however, make sense of life the way that it made sense to them to be. So you have a really high degree of dysfunction. So what we do is, but among very small amount of people, as we bring that into a center position and we say, you know what, these people are really, really suffering. We need to make room for this. More people access this particular thing. More people are drawn to this. More people say, yeah, me too. I'm also, I don't, whatever, and I'm non-binary and all these things. So now
it's too difficult to be normal. And if they are given an exception, then why do I have to work to be normal?
And now you see that dysfunction being borne out everywhere. It's like, it's online, it's the arguments about pronouns and bios, it's being imposed on people everywhere. We all have to play into this dysfunction now. We all have to experience it. So it's sort of like takes this thing. It's almost like
it's like legalizing drugs.
It's like a cancer that's in a tumor.
Yeah.
But then when you crush it and break it open, it metastasizes throughout the body. So I think there's always going to be a sort of push-pull pendulum
Yeah.
swing between order and disorder for lots of reasons, but
Yeah.
that is part of the picture.
Yeah, man. What's to say? Hard men make strong times, or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that whole thing, that whole cycle. Let's go back to chat.
Yeah.
And we're at our
Oh,
our
yeah.
hour. We got a lot of chats. Thank you so much
Thank
for tuning
you.
in,
Oh,
guys.
gosh, that's
I want to
nice.
get to self-made woman or GOP. I can't remember how to pronounce.
I'm not voting for Trump, but Trump's team. Shout out to RFK Jr., Vivek, Tulsi, and Elon. Off topic. Today is the 3rd of November, 2024, and I still want a Neuralink.
Yeah.
Oof.
Really wants a Neuralink.
I don't want that. I want nothing to do with
Did I
that.
do vapor trails? I
don't think
did.
so.
What is SS marriage?
SS.
What SS marriage? Same-sex marriage
same-sex.
declares is that there is no difference between men and women.
Oh, yeah.
Slippery slope equal logical conclusion.
Interesting.
I was back when it was 2003. It was Bush versus Kerry, and nothing was going to change. Kerry's a freaking war hawk too. He was talking about censoring people. It's like, we have to get around that First Amendment. It's just too much to deal with. And maybe I was taking it out of context or whatever. But I remember I was living in Portland. It was a beautiful time to be in Portland. And I had this sense like, this is a little too good and people are a little too out of touch with just how good life is. And they're kind of like full of themselves, even though they didn't really create this. It's just a happy accident at that point in time. And some pollster or some young woman was coming around having people to put gay marriage on the ballot. She's like, oh, would you like to put gay marriage on the ballot? I'm like, no. And she was like really shocked. And it was this point in time where she would have been really angry 10 years later, 20 years later now. Like, what do you mean you don't you want their rights to have the same? Why do you get the right and they don't get the right? The right to marriage, which is an interesting thing because it's not a right, it's a duty. It's a contract that I'm signing, a man and a woman to come together and sign a contract that they're going to fulfill. They're going to merge their financial and their life and their decisions together and they both have to fulfill this contract. Instead of it's a right, you just get access to this thing and then you get the free healthcare on the other side. They only look at the things as a benefit, and you're denying somebody the benefit of legitimacy and all the bounty that comes from and the tax breaks that come from that kind of thing. But it was interesting, and I was at that point, I'm like, no, you can't just use that word. If you want to do civil union, that's fine, but you can't use that word. Why do you have to use that word? That's offensive to me.
You said at the time?
No, I'm not going to get in an argument with it, but I was arguing with my girlfriend at the time, Kate, who was pro-abortion and pro-gay marriage. I'm like, well, there's these realities here about what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of marriage? And if we start playing around with those words and we unmoor those words from that order, what are we going to stick them to? It's just freedom.
Yeah.
The only thing is like whatever I want is the order.
Yeah.
And so I totally understand that thing. Once you take it away from what it is, what order are you imposing now?
Right.
And it's bake my fucking cake. That's the order. It's like, you can't tell me what is right and wrong anymore. My order is the order. And what happens to society then? It fractures. There's a deracination. It just speeds up the process that we're already going on, where people are less and less connected to each other and more connected to themselves. And then there has to be the swapping out of the cultural order with the state order, and this thing called rights, this thing called self-expression and autonomy. And the state is there. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are there to put tampons wherever you need them, and there to give you an abortion whenever you need it. Whenever you need it, like whatever you choose is
that
your
is
choice.
the right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the order. So we have to examine what the content of this normativity is plugged into, and what you see. What I'm arguing is that it's an entropic, anti-order sort of order that scrambles for order in all these really weird ways.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so there seems to be also a spectrum from noticing what is best, what is objectively best for human flourishing, being able to assert that and say, here's the best way.
Yes.
We know that, and being able to just say that firmly.
Yes.
And then rejecting someone who chooses the other, that's another thing. That's another step down the line.
No, the other, what do you mean?
An alternative.
Okay. An
Okay.
alternative to what is
To
best.
what? So
Yeah.
so let's just say, so this is the thing that I found particularly troubling when I was studying counseling when I was in graduate school.
Yeah.
And I was being told by my graduate school that we needed to decenter heteronormativity. We needed to crack down on heteronormativity. That is a bad thing, say these psychologists. Why? Because of social justice, because it leaves people marginalized, not because of this psychological literature on human flourishing and what's right for people, but because of marginalized people and it's discrimination and you want to do that. So this is just gender. They also said all kinds of stuff about race,
Yeah.
which we could get into, but
We've done that.
we've done that. Yeah. So they also said degender everything. As counselors, you need to degender all your language. So you got to stop saying sister and brother and mother and father. And you got to go to sibling, and you can't say woman. You have to say a person with a vulva, or a person.
Well, what do you do with the word
person.
blonde? Do you just put an X there? Because that's one of the few gendered words in English.
Okay, so I don't know. That's getting way down into the weeds of the language. But this is what we were being told, right?
Yeah.
We were being told, I've used this example even recently, so people might have already heard me talk about this, but we were told in a human sexuality class that we might have clients that come in and say really outlandish things to us that we haven't heard before. And it's our job to not react to them. We shouldn't laugh at them. We should just, support them. And if it's not bothering them, then it's not a problem. I mean, how do you determine when something is bad for them? Well, basically, do they think it's bad for them? And so the teacher gave this example of her client who told her he did scat porn. I don't even want to say that. I keep saying this word. I don't want to be the voice of that you've heard those words from, but her client did this, and it wasn't, how do you find out, why does he do this really debasing thing? What does this mean for him? Where does this come from in his life? And how can you help him to recognize his value so that he won't do this thing? We couldn't say that this was bad for him. The teacher couldn't say that this was bad. It was like, well, is it bothering him? If it's not bothering him, then it's not a problem. It's just his lifestyle, right? So we, as psychology professionals, we can't say this is the best way to do it. Because that automatically is not only equated with trying to control people who do it differently, but with hating them and wanting them to die. So it's like you are transphobic, you are homophobic, you are heteronormative, and you want these people, you want to deny their entire existence. It's like, no, can't you just say, here is the best way that we know of for humans to live their life? And if you're doing it a different way and that's not what you want to work on with me here, well, to the extent that it's not coming up in all the other things that you're bringing up, we can target your particular goals. But as we get deeper, we're going to find ourselves back at this. So if you want to go really deep into what's going on for you, we are going to have to get into, why are you doing it this way? And what does that mean for you? And where does that come from? But we're not even equipped with that. We're not even equipped with that authority anymore to say what's best for human beings. So what the hell are we doing? What is a psychologist now? What is a counselor in this system?
Well, somebody gets paid.
It's just somebody that you pay to support whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever you think you should be doing.
Yeah.
So
I don't see any way how it can be any other way at this point. I don't see how it could be any other way.
That seems like the one place where we should still be able to have, well, I guess I would say spiritual authorities and psychological authorities should still be able to lean on history and research and just all that we know about what really works for people. Not to impose that on other people and force it, but at least to be able to point to it. And I guess I find that to be just an open question of what does that mean, and how do we find some kind of moral consensus? Is that even possible?
It's possible. It's just a constant debate. It's a political project. and there's real political maneuvers that are involved in that. And
Why does
it's,
it have to be political? That's the thing I wonder.
well, it depends on what you're hearing when I say political.
Governmental?
No,
Okay.
it's like the debate, the culture
The body
war,
politic?
the culture war, so called.
Civil society?
Yeah, but it's inherently groups forming under common interests, and then exerting their will, or at least broadcasting their will and then performing their will together.
Next time we talk, we should just talk about like age differences and duty sex and all those fun things that come up on Twitter.
Human sexuality exists. This is from Vapor Trails, and thank you very much for supporting the channel, Vapor. Human sexuality exists for the purpose of reproduction. Without it, the species would cease to exist. That kind of seems like good reason to center the male-female relationship in society.
It also exists for pair bonding. But yes, primary is for reproduction.
Pair bonding. There was a joke there. I'm just going to pass over that. Jenny's getting inky with it. When you normalize the fringe, the normal becomes irrelevant. Accepting gay marriage, I don't think, was the problem. It was the normalizing of it. Perhaps that is why gays don't like being called normal. Well, that's the thing. Once it became a political project to redefine marriage, it then became a political project to redefine male and female, to redefine everything about our culture, and
which is interchangeable.
And I do think that gay marriage is a descendant of feminist political project, making the personal political, and it does use civil rights, the civil rights legislation.
Is feminism
to do it.
an origin or a reaction? I would say it's a reaction.
Well, I think it's all. I think that the civil rights, feminism, gay marriage, and now trans rights, it's all a part of liberalism's project of making the personal public, of turning the personal into a political mechanism, and then legislating that, and involving that in legislation, and protecting these categories. And it's just a part of the process.
Yeah, I wonder if how much of it is just scale, and that it's impossible not to think rigidly and legalistically at scale.
Clue says we have informative content. Thanks, dude.
Thank you.
Do you have any recipes that you want to discuss as a closing? We talked about moussaka. Did we eat anything this week?
My daughter gave me a sourdough starter.
Oh yeah, you got to get on that.
I got to figure that out.
We went to
what to do with it. It's like a living food that I don't know how to take care of yet.
Yeah.
I have instructions from both of my daughters. They've sent me copious instructions.
And you're adamantly refused to make this your hobby. Like, I do not want bread as my hobby.
I don't want it to be my hobby. I don't want it to take over my life. But if you wanted to learn it, I do love sourdough.
I'm not particularly keen on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna give it a shot.
Yeah.
Apparently, I can leave it in the fridge, and that's where it is right now.
Yeah.
And I won't kill it.
Yeah.
If I don't feed it as often if it's cold.
Yeah, you got to feed it. You got to keep on top of that sourdough starter.
That's it. That's the only recipe I have. I've been making pots.
Next thing you know, you'll be drinking your pumpkin spice latte, making your sourdough, just like the white girl that you always knew yourself to be.
I don't drink pumpkin spice anything.
I know.
That's gross.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess your basic bitch white girl is denied. You don't get that achievement. But I love you. Thank you very much for joining me.
I love you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely.
To my kitchen table.
This is our okay, yeah. Yeah, it's yours.
And it's yours. You bought it.
Well, I bought it for you, and I bought it for me, and I bought it for us. So I guess we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I don't have anything to plug right now other than I hope that people do get out and vote.
Are you?
And oh man, it's going to be crazy.
You could do an election night live stream.
I was going to jump on with somebody invited me on. I think it was
You're going to bring Adrian with you? It's Tuesday night.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. This is mine and Adrian's time. Oh, I forgot all about that. Well, we'll see.
Yeah,
I
I know,
guess I'll
it's
have to.
weird.
Yeah, it'll be really weird having
Yeah.
a 10-year-old like talk to me about mushrooms while I'm talking to everybody about like the shenanigans in
Yeah.
our electoral system. I hope it's decided. I hope it's clean.
Just have him wear a mask if he
I
shows up on
really,
screen.
I really, I
I hope
favor
so too.
Trump. I think it's very obvious that at this point I favor Trump. I favor Vance. I favor the direction
Yep.
that they are going, and that I again, like, I get information from my dreams that might be completely irrelevant, but I do think that there's a lot of really fresh energy that's possible in that. But what I want for our country is for it to be really straightforward
I know, I do too.
and really definite.
Yeah.
And then we can just move on and we can figure that out. And then we can totally laugh at all of the shit libs screaming.
Well, what I hope is that it's decisive and over with quickly.
Yeah.
And that come holidays, we are around family and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Whatever happened.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's able to just not be the topic of conversation because we
have something else to talk about. What else is there
Yeah,
to talk about?
everything.
Yeah.
Everything. The whole world of
Oh,
things.
jeez. Everything.
Everything.
Okay. Let's talk about everything.
Let's talk about lizards.
Okay. Well, I love you anyway. And I love chat. Thanks for showing up. You guys have good fun. Find Leslie's channel at the Radical Center and Leslie Elliott on Twitter. I'm Benjamin A. Boyce, of course. And that was The Deep End.
Bye all.